I'm Amanda Knox.
And I'm Christopher Robinson.
And this
is Who's Right? Between our usual Labyrinth episodes, we sit down to debate something quite serious.
Or silly.
And ask you, who is right?
It's me.
It's me.
It's me.
It's clearly me.
No, definitely me.
It's me.
Me?
No, me.
It's me.
How could it be anyone but me?
Says the man sleeping on the couch.
So here we are.
Here we are, not in Seattle.
Yes. In Budapest, of all places.
In Budapest. I have returned to the top bun. My hair is finally back, so it's finally up. Yeah, it's cool to be in Budapest, gotta say. I haven't really seen much of it.
No, we've been on a soundstage.
Which is pretty cool. What are we arguing about today?
Talking about family.
Oh, okay. Good?
Good or whack? We're talking about whether or not blood is thicker than water. That age-old question. And I think both of us have some... We're going to try not to name names here when we bring up some personal family stuff, but everyone has their family drama.
I know what you're talking about.
You know? And, you know, I think the question for me is, what's the line at which you can or should sever a relationship with a family member? Is there a line, or does being
There's
family...
absolutely a line.
Okay. So there's no such thing as like you get a lifetime pass because you're
absolutely
you can get uninvited
not.
to Thanksgiving. You can be cut out of someone's life entirely.
Yes. Anyone can be cut out of anyone's life, I think, because everyone has the right to decide who gets to be a part of their life or not. I think.
Proponent of the chosen family idea. Which
isn't to say that you don't owe things to people in your family, especially if you are, like, I'm thinking parent to child, in particular. That is a very special relationship where there is an innate sense of owing something to somebody. I do not think that children owe their parents anything. I think parents owe their children things.
Nobody asked to be born.
No one asked to be born. And I think, and I feel like, I mean, it'd be interesting to unpack the nuances of this, but I kind of feel like you never stop being a parent. So even when your child is an adult, in my brain, like my immediate response is, you still owe your child emotional support, like whatever's going on in their life. Like as a parent, your responsibility is to be their safety net. And to do things that are in their best interest.
Do you owe siblings anything?
I don't think so, no.
Because I have a family member who is in a situation where they've been helping a sibling of theirs.
Yeah.
And it's become a toxic, parasitic relationship.
Sure.
And the sibling, isn't grateful and won't leave. But also, my family member doesn't want to boot out this blood relative.
Yeah.
In the worry that they may end up on the street. Like, do you think
the situation being one person has a house, the sibling does not. Sibling has been living at their house for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And is an adult and doesn't want to leave even when asked to leave. And the one who is hosting said sibling is in a bind because she does not feel comfortable booting him out. And I would say that that's a really clear case for me of she has the right to boot him out.
All right, we're going to rewind. Charlie, you're going to have to delete this
stuff.
Stuff.
Why can't I say she?
I don't want you to say she. I don't want you to be
Well,
that
then
specific.
it's really confusing.
We don't need to say she. So we're rewinding back. We're trying not to be specific.
Stop kicking me.
Okay, well, don't say she. Do you want to go back and re-say those things without saying she?
I don't know what I said. I think we need to be specific enough that there are two siblings. Sibling 1 has a home. Sibling 2 does not. Sibling 2 has been living at sibling 1's home for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And sibling 1 doesn't want sibling 2 to be living there anymore. But sibling 2 refuses to leave, and sibling 1 refuses to kick out sibling 2.
And this causes other rippling family drama. And so, this person feels an obligation to their sibling.
Sibling 1
right?
feels an obligation to sibling 2.
Yeah. Like they can't just, it's blood, it's family. They can't just boot them out on the street, and who knows what happens.
Is that what sibling 1's problem is, though? Or is it simply that sibling 1 is genuinely afraid that something bad will happen to sibling 2 if sibling 1 kicks
Well,
sibling
something
2
bad
out?
might, that's not an illegitimate worry. Something bad might happen, right?
But
Maybe
my
sibling
question
2 does end up homeless.
But my question is sibling 1 acting from a place of feeling like they have a obligation to sibling 2, or do they understand they don't have an obligation to sibling 2? This is a choice, and it's an uncomfortable choice, but they would rather choose to be uncomfortable with their sibling than for their sibling to be in peril.
My sense is that it's an obligation, but religion comes into this as well. What's the Christian thing to do is a part of this. But I think it's a sense of, you grow up with a person, you spend your life with them, you have deep, deep ties, and you have deep, deep love.
Yeah, you don't want anything bad to happen to them.
Right.
And you're looking at yourself as the final safety net for this person. And if you remove that safety net, what could happen? That's what I think is going on, honestly. And so that's coming more from a place of love than a place of obligation. But even so,
what's the line between love and obligation there?
That's, I think, at the heart of this debate, because I think we've skipped ahead to the ultimate question. Well, that is the question. What is the difference between love and obligation? I think it's a felt thing.
Can you love someone without feeling an obligation to them, or does one entail the other?
No. You can absolutely feel love for a person and not feel an obligation to them.
So a minute ago you said that you don't think children owe their parents anything.
Right.
Now,
I love my mom, but I don't owe her anything.
But if you, find yourself in a situation where your parent is in dire need, your love might motivate you to help them out.
Yeah.
Right? But if you have a toxic relationship with that parent and don't feel some overwhelming love toward them, then you're like, you don't owe them anything.
Yeah. No. It's very simple for me. I think the more difficult question is when you do have an obligation to this person that you love. And like a child. And that child is potentially a person who, is it possible for parents to not love their children? I think so.
Yeah.
And I think that there are certain things that children can do which are unforgivable, and yet, say one of your children does something unforgivable to another one of your children. You're still obligated to both children, right? But now you're in a scenario where one of those siblings has absolutely every right to cut out their sibling from their life.
Yeah.
And so now you're navigating a scenario where you are obligated to two people who do not want each other in each other's lives. And as a parent, you have to respect that. You have to respect your child's desire to cut someone from their life and not force them to be in a relationship with someone who they don't want to be in a relationship with, and at the same time continue to have a relationship with your child who committed the unforgivable thing. I think that's the more psychologically fraught scenario. But again, it feels really clear to me that I'm trying to imagine any single other relationship where there's a genuine obligation.
I mean, people make promises when they get married. Do those obligations matter? They're a lesser form of obligation to you than the kind that comes with.
Right. Well, sure. But that's, I think, that's an implicit thing.
You're both entering into it on either side, and the child is not entering into
the child does not choose their parents. They does not choose to exist. This is a relationship that was fundamental.
I tend to agree with you here. I'm just wondering.
And I feel like that's the only relationship where it's unconditional and therefore it's obligated. Every other relationship has terms.
So blood is thicker than water in that one direction.
In that one direction.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no.
Has your view or conception of family changed at all from your experience in Italy and seeing the ways that family came together over past enmities and showed up for you? Like, did that alter your sense of what family meant?
It was less to do with my family coming together to support me and more my experience of seeing other people's in prison's relationship was with their family. So I don't know. I have felt very, very solidly comfortable with my family dynamic for ever, really. This is like maybe the pro-divorce argument is like, I think that my parents made the right decision to get divorced, not just for their own sakes, but for mine. And Deanna's, and they made conscious decisions.
This is when you're 1 year old.
Yeah. But they made conscious decisions when they were divorced to put us first, even in the divorce. Like, Dad could have moved to anywhere and started a new life, but he didn't. He moved 2 blocks away so that I would be able to have access to him as a child. So I think my family, I've been very, very solidly supported my entire life by my family. And I feel like I am very, very comfortable and I understand this sense of obligation versus love because of my family and how not confused anyone is about this question. And it's interesting because it's never something that we've ever really explicitly talked about. It's just always sort of manifested in what I think is the most ethical situation. That said, what I experienced in prison was being around lots of people who, in fact, I don't think anyone that I was imprisoned with had the same relationship with their family that I did. Like
universally various forms of broken families, you're saying?
Yes. And abandonment and betrayal.
Yeah.
And I was shocked because I think for me, the thing that I was confused, that I didn't understand prior to this experience was I just assumed that everyone's family was like mine. Why would I
you
assume
knew that some people's parents weren't divorced?
Well, no, I'm not talking about the divorce question. I'm talking about that sense of support.
You didn't assume that they were just like yours. You knew there were different kinds of families.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that sense of love and obligation.
You didn't have friends in high school or whatever who had more complicated family dynamics?
We didn't talk about that. My best friend, I guess, had a more complicated relationship with her parents. But then I just kind of adopted her into my family. I don't know. Maybe I was just dumb and not thinking. But I was shocked when I talked to people in prison about their families. And there was a very, very apparent difference between me and the other prisoners where I had people coming to see me.
Yeah.
Most people that I encountered in prison very rarely had people come to see them.
So what did that change for you about your sense of the meaning of family?
It just made me feel really lucky that I have the family that I have.
And one of the things that has happened in the wake of all this, and again, we won't name names, but I know that you've had some family members who you've had conflict with, who have, brought up the way they've in the past, like, I was there for you when everything was going down.
Actually, here I think we should bring up another interesting, potentially dramatic scenario that's less specific.
Okay.
Which is, I said that there's like only one relationship where there is just like clear and unequivocal obligation, which is parent to child, and that there is no such thing between siblings or, between other relationships. That said, because you're to say that like no matter what happens, one person is still obligated to the other. That isn't to say, though, that within a certain framework, you are obligated to people. Like, I'm married to you.
Yeah.
I'm obligated to you in certain ways because I'm married. That's not unbroken. Like, it's not unbreakable.
Right.
There are certain things we can do that would sever that sense of obligation and relationship. Same thing between siblings. But the interesting thing, I think, is when you're in those kinds of relationships where there is not unconditional obligation, when those relationships come into conflict. So like, say, for example, you have, I don't know, 2 siblings. I have 3 siblings, but say you have 2 siblings, and sibling 1 does something to sibling 2 that is unforgivable, and those 2 sever a relationship. But I'm sibling 3. And what now is my obligation to either of those siblings? That's where it becomes interesting, because I can say to myself, depending on what's going on, that the unforgivable thing that sibling 1 did to sibling 2, also it entails me severing a relationship with sibling 1. Or it might entail
solidarity severance.
Yeah, like a solidarity severance. Or it just means that I continue having a relationship with sibling 1, but I just have to like somehow do things different, like have a different sort of sibling dynamic than I otherwise might have had. Like, when you find yourself where people who don't have unconditional relationships with you come into conflict, that I think is more interesting. And then you get into these like weird equations in your brain where you're going, okay, well, does my husband's needs of me count higher than my uncle's? Like, where, how do you decide like who you are loyal to, or who you are obligated to in a scenario where you are not like the directly afflicted party, but like there's there's conflict between 2 people in your life who you love and have a relationship with, but that does have boundaries around it.
I mean, this is the point where you kind of have to get into specifics if you're going to suss out all the intricacies of a relationship like that. I think it's going to be case dependent there, right?
Sure.
I think I want to maybe broaden it out to a question that comes to mind for me from thinking back to Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind.
Okay.
And the moral foundations theory, where different people in the populace or around the world have different moral taste buds. Some people really feel the care-harm foundation. They see things in the world where someone's being harmed, and they feel a sense of empathy towards that and care. Not everyone has that moral taste bud activated to the same degree. Some people really feel sanctity in the same way that people who are motivated by care-harm feel care-harm. Like, it's this deep ingrained sense that like some sacred thing is being violated. And they truly feel that in a moral way that is an emotion, essentially. It's not a logical thing. It's something that they deeply feel. Like, you don't think that someone torturing a puppy is wrong out of some logical consideration. You witness it and react viscerally, right? One of the moral foundations is loyalty. And through the moral surveys that Jonathan Haidt conducted, He found that people in weird societies, Western educated, industrial rich democracies, they tend to rate highly on the Care Harm Foundation and on the Freedom Liberty Foundation. They don't
freedom versus what?
Versus control. I don't know, like
or like is it solidarity or like
we'll have to look it up.
I'll look this up.
But they don't rate as highly on the Sanctity Foundation, on the Loyalty Foundation, right? There's a couple others. But among conservatives, among the, religious conservatives, the right wing.
Freedom versus community. So like individual liberty versus
loyalty does rate higher among conservatives, right? So I think you can look at the political spectrum and you can see things like the Loyalty Foundation playing out in Trump world a lot. And a guy like Donald Trump himself is highly motivated out of loyalty. It's a huge value for him. You can see it in how it's almost his most important value. He wants people to be loyal to him. And if they're not, he cuts them out and they are persona non grata, right? So I guess my question here is like, it's a really hard thing to untangle, but I want to like give the fairest shake I can to people who feel that sense of loyalty as a deep moral foundation in the same way I feel Care Harm, because I personally don't feel loyalty, and I don't think you do either, in that deep moral way. I'm like, if you cross that line, you're out of my life, right?
Or I've experienced this where I know there are people in my life that I love and care about who also feel this deep loyalty foundation. And for them, it's like they don't care if the person that they are loyal to is right or wrong. What they care about is supporting them, whether or not they're right or wrong. And it's like, well, if you're wrong, I'm going to tell you you're wrong and not necessarily support you.
People feel that, and that motivates them to show up for family in certain ways and to take the side of family in a dispute, even, at the expense of rationality or at the expense of like a reasoned analysis of like what's actually true or what's actually right according to other foundations. Because for them, even if the family member committed some harm, the harm, if they're a person for whom
I remember having a conversation once with someone that I care about and love, where like the beginning of the conversation was, okay, so like they came up to me and we were going to talk about like this conflict that we saw was happening between these two people that we love. And they came up to me and were like, okay, so let's just agree that I'm going to take this side and you're going to take this side. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why are you just assuming that I'm going to take this person's side versus that person's side? Like, what? And so, like, even just like the foundation,
they were assuming that just based on
the loyalty and relationship dynamics. They were like, I'm going to be
loyal to my person. You're going to be loyal to your person.
And I was like, what?
And you're like, no, I'm going to be loyal to the truth.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about like, what's going on here? Let's like unravel this conflict and see if we can, as the people who are loyal to these people who are in a conflict, see if we can like talk to each other about how we can help them resolve the conflict. That's how I was thinking I was going to engage in this conversation. And instead, like this person came up to me and was like, okay, we're going to debate now because I'm on this person's side and you're on that person's side. And I was just like, what? Why? Yeah, that was a very odd scenario for me. I was just really surprised. But again, it gets back to that point of like, some people feel like in a certain conflict, it's about taking the side of your person, not about engaging with the material essence of the conflict.
We all have these moral emotions from evolution, right? Like, it was presumably beneficial for the survival of humans for certain people to feel sort of tribal loyalty, right? You see it with politics and sports teams and family dynamics, and it creates group cohesion, and group cohesion helps that group survive in a world of uncertainty and chaos and conflict, right? So I guess the question we arrive at now is like, okay, here we are, a group of a human population in which these various feelings and tendencies we have are not evenly distributed. Some of us really feel empathy for when someone else is being harmed. Some of us don't feel that empathy to the same degree. Others really feel the importance of like sticking together, loyalty, and they feel that more strongly than they feel the care harm thing. And so when a dispute comes up where someone's been harmed by someone else, they're like, yeah, okay, but I got to take the side of my person. It's really, really hard as people who feel the care harm to sit there and go, their perspective is just as valid as mine. Like you don't, can you say that? Do you say that? Or do
no,
you,
but the
you
thing
think
that
their perspective is not as valid?
The thing that I find really annoying about this entire scenario is that I think that you can be caring, like you can be concerned about care harm and like confront your loved one that you're loyal to about how they harmed someone. Like you can be loyal to your person while also confronting them with like the fact that they harmed someone and say, let me help you to resolve the fact that you are wrong and you harmed someone. Like, I feel like that's where this
really
all is stupid. Yeah. That I feel like this is so stupid that like this idea that you have to deny the reality that someone harmed another human being just so that you can be supportive of your person. Like you can absolutely accept that reality and really like care about like care harm and still be loyal to the person who happens to be wrong in the scenario. It's very annoying to me when people are just like,
okay.
So it's like, it's so obvious to me. And yet like it seems to be really complicated.
And on like a, large political scale, then like being loyal to your country, you would not mean you never criticize your country.
If anything,
it would mean that you hold your country to account.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But no, like.
So where does that come from then? What is that like the blind, like, this is my family, I don't care what they did, they're family? Where does that come from then? Does it come from people who just haven't thought deeply enough about?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe it could come from fear that if you're not supporting your person when they're wrong, something bad is going to happen to that person and you can't protect them from it. So it's better to be loyal to them and support them and deny reality to protect them. That could be coming from that place.
I mean, to bring this back to the scenario we were talking about earlier with sibling 1 and sibling 2, where sibling 2 has been, living in the house of sibling 1 for 10 years in an unwanted way and refuses to leave. Sibling 1 doesn't want to boot them out. The perspective I've taken on it is that you're not actually helping. You think you're helping your sibling, you're not. That person's life has not improved by any reasonable metric. And I've had these discussions and I've tried to, have an intervention, be like, look at your sibling here. Like, are their relationships any better than they were 10 years ago? Is their health any better? Is their financial situation any better? Like, if anything, all those metrics, this person's life has deteriorated as they've been living at your house. And for me, that's a sign that like your sense of loyalty to family is actually being misguided there. If you actually wanted to help that person,
I'm not compelled by that because that's not what sibling 2 is asking.
Oh, but people don't always ask for what they actually need. They often don't.
I understand that. But I don't think that sibling 1's feelings are coming from a place of what does my sibling need? They're coming from a place of wanting to respond to what does my sibling want?
But that comes back to your whole question about, well, I'm going to take my person's side and you're going to take your person's side. It's like, if you're saying that you can show up in a loyal way for someone while also telling them that they're wrong.
What I'm telling you right now is that the way that you are talking, like having an intervention with sibling 1, you are not communicating with a language that is going to speak to their concerns and be effective, is what I'm saying. So I'm not defending sibling 1's position. Okay. I'm saying that sibling one's position is coming from an emotional place that is not rational. And so when you try to use rational language to address it, you're not going to...
It's a separate debate here about how to do effective communication.
Okay.
I'm talking about the philosophical...
I think the more interesting question in this sibling one and sibling two debate is the ripple effect consequences.
Yeah.
Because sibling one's decision to enable the bad behavior of sibling two is not just limited to their relationship, but also to the relationship of those around them, and has that a negative
affects
impact.
The whole household, everyone who lives in that house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just pointing out, based on your earlier logic, that a true way to show up and be loyal to sibling two there is tough love in a sense. It's like, I know you're asking for this and you say you want this, and I care about you, and I'm going to be here for you, sibling, because I care about you. But the way I'm going to be here for you is by denying you the thing you say you want. Like, that's a totally rational way
I don't like when people pose things that way. The way that I would pose this to sibling one is, and the way that I hate it when people say, I know what's good for you. Meh. Like, that's such bullshit to me. So instead, like, for me, it is no, don't.
All right.
The thing is that sibling one has the right to have boundaries. And sibling one is acting as if their boundaries don't exist because it is sibling two. It is their sibling. And I reinforce the fact that it's like, sibling one, you have the right to have boundaries, and you are not enforcing those boundaries because, like, you've communicated the desire to have those boundaries.
I just don't see how that's any different than your friend or family member being totally wrong about something, and you saying, look, sorry, you're wrong. I'm here for you, but I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. You know, like in that scenario you brought up about, I'm going to take my person's side. You're going to, like, how is it different than that?
I mean, this all comes back down to feelings, right? And, like, what do you do if you feel love? Does that translate into obligation in your mind? And I'm arguing that people need to recognize when they are in toxic relationships with people that they love, and they need to establish boundaries to protect themselves, despite just because you feel love for somebody does not mean that you are obligated. Loyalty. Yeah, love and loyalty to somebody does not mean that you are obligated to them. And I think a lot of people in their mind associate that feeling with love and loyalty to the act of obligation. Mm. And I'm trying to sever that link, because I understand that there is, like, an emotional connection between all those things, but I'm trying to say that it's not the same thing. And that you should not automatically assume that because you feel love and loyalty to a person that you are therefore obligated to them.
God, I feel exhausted by this conversation.
Yeah, I know. Why? Why did this happen? Why did we have to go here? Are you exhausted?
Yeah.
I'm just sad now.
Well, we want to hear your thoughts on blood and water and loyalty and family, and how you've drawn the line in the past. And if you are a care harm person, how you feel about the people who really feel that sense of loyalty to family, if you don't. And if you're a person who really feels, especially if you're one of these people who really feels that loyalty in a moral way, like, I want to hear from you about how...
What are we missing here?
You know?
I do want to say, can't recommend enough The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, because it gets into all of this in a really in-depth, interesting ways, and puts forth these, like, psychological ideas, metaphors for how our minds work, which is super interesting. Love that book.
Yeah. And another great book, speaking of, is Free by Amanda Knox, which just came out recently, and I hope you pick up a copy. I'm so proud of Amanda. It's a fantastic book. Please, for her sake, for your sake, for my sake, for the world's sake, set yourself free and get a copy. More information, of course, about everything we're doing is at
AmandaKnox.com. You can find me on Bluesky at amandanox.com.
At wisecracker.bsky.social.
On Instagram at amamanox.
At mccarbon.
And that's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Labyrinths.